morning and welcome to Tuesdays with the Pilgrim. Today we continue A Prophet in Babylon, Chapter 17, Part B, Olivia's Choice. If you remember last week we ended with the line, Olivia flushed and left the room. 2 hours later, when the meeting of the club was over, Jordan called Olivia. He was in a good humor now, as he usually was after a club night, when he had been strengthened in his own opinions by hearing them expressed by others. "And so my little girl has become a controversialist," he said with a smile. "Sit down, my dear. I want to talk to you." Olivia silently obeyed. Her face was pale, and she could scarcely control the nervous movement of her hands. "I suppose, my dear, it is quite natural that you should have been impressed by Gaunt's speech in Madison Garden. I own it was effective. But do you think that it was quite nice of you to contradict me so flatly at my own table in the presence of others, my child?" "No, father, it was not nice of me at all. I am sorry that I did it, for I saw that it upset you." "Well, my child, that's enough said. It's all I expected you to say, and I was sorry less for myself than that those who heard you should have a bad opinion of your judgment. So now we'll forget all about Gaunt and talk of something else." Olivia sat silent for a moment. Then she said in a low voice, "But father, I want to talk to you about Mr. Gaunt. I've wanted to for a long time, but I've been afraid. I am sorry that I spoke when I did, but you must not think that I did not mean what I said. I did mean it, and I mean it still. I think Mr. Gaunt is a very noble man, and I can't think you are quite just in the way you talk about him." Jordan's face hardened at the words. "You mean to tell me that you believe in a man whom I have every reason to dislike and condemn? In other words, you set up your judgment against mine?" "But why do you dislike and condemn him, father? Do you condemn him only because you dislike him?" "That is not a question you ought to put to me." "But father, I can't understand your feelings, and I'm dreadfully afraid you are wrong. Oh, it hurts me to say it, but I must say it. I have always taken your word for law. I have done so sometimes against my own judgment. But I am no longer a child, father. There are matters on which I must think for myself, matters of right and wrong, and this is one of them." "And since when have you commenced the dangerous process of thinking for yourself?" "Father, please don't speak like that. I cannot bear satire from you." She left her seat and knelt beside him. The action, so gentle and dutiful, it touched Jordan. He laid his hand on her head and said in a gentler voice, "Well, speak to me freely. I will try to listen patiently. What are the thoughts that trouble you, Olivia?" "They are thoughts that have grown up in my heart ever since you took me with you to hear Mr. Gaunt in Madison Garden, father. I have struggled against them. Oh, believe me, I have struggled day and night, because I feared they would offend you. But they have become too strong for me. They rise out of myself. They will not be denied. That night when I heard Mr. Gaunt, I felt that he spoke to me, that what he said was the voice of my own soul. I felt that I had never been truly religious. I hadn't understood what it meant. But then I knew. It came to me suddenly that the path he trod was the path of truth. I tried to laugh away the impression. I heard all that you said against him, but still his voice called me, and I saw him beckoning to me to the path he trod. There are some things which we learn from the inner voice. That night the inner voice spoke." "Well," said Jordan, "go on. You've never understood religion. How do you know what it means in relation to me? I am not only your father, but your minister. Do you wish to tell me that I have failed to interpret to you the meaning of religion?" "No, I dare not say that, father." "Then what is it you have to say?" "I don't know how to put it, father. It's not that you have not taught me a great deal, but it is as I thought I had suddenly seen a fresh light. It's like turning a corner in a road. All at once you get a new view which you did not imagine to exist. I see now that religion is self-sacrifice and service. It's not thinking about things, but doing them. That is where it seems to me that Gaunt is so right." And am I so wrong, I suppose? Father, don't make me say that. You have already said it by implication. Jordan rose from his chair and began to pace the room. A harder heart than Olivia's might have pitied him in that moment. His face had grown pale and set, but it was less with anger than with dismay. He had lost one child through the harshness of his temper. Was he to lose another? A great fear clutched his heart. But it is characteristic of men like Jordan that the harsh egotism which has been the habit of years cannot be set aside even when it threatens total disaster. It must be gratified at the price of tragedy. For some moments his mind wavered. He knew that his daughter was now a woman, and had a right to her own opinions. He would have granted that right on any other subject but her approval of Gaunt. But on this subject his mind was inflamed. His temper was exacerbated. He made himself the public opponent of Gaunt. What a position of ridicule he would occupy if his own daughter should espouse Gaunt's cause. And at that thought self-love turned the scale in his contending mind. And with self-love came a gust of angry pity for himself, a swift, agonized perception that in some way life had gone wrong with him and would continue to go wrong. With some men such a vision might have proved corrective. It might have suggested caution. It might at least have been a warning against rash and angry action. But its only effect on Jordan was to harden his heart, to render the will more obstinate, to call forth in the name of self-respect that assertion of authority which had already wrought so much havoc in his life. He spoke suddenly and sharply. "Olivia," he said, "let us understand each other. Is there anything else in your mind on this painful subject which you have not expressed?" "Yes, Father, there is." "What is it?" "I want to join the League of Service, Father." "Then understand once and for all that I forbid it." "But why, Father? You cannot deny that it does good. You surely would not forbid me doing good in a way that seems possible to me." "I do deny that it does good. I regard the League of Service as ridiculous and fantastic, and Gaunt as an impostor. I have taken my side, and I will not allow myself to be made ridiculous by my daughter taking the opposite side. You can find plenty of ways of doing good without joining Gaunt's fanatical movement. Go and work in any way you will, do anything you like, I will not complain, but this thing I forbid you to do." Olivia had risen from her knees now. She stood very straight and pale, her hands clasped before her, her face and figure, her fair hair gathered in a simple knot, her clear brown eyes, her white dress, conveyed the indelible impression of virginal strength and purity. "Then I must disobey you, Father. I have obeyed you all my life, but here my obedience must end." "Olivia, do you understand what you are saying?" "Yes, Father, I understand." "Do you understand that if you join the League of Service, you can no longer live in this house? I could not bear that." "Father, do you mean that? Say you do not mean it. You shut your door once on Robert. Will you shut me out also? Oh, Father, why inflict such suffering on yourself?" "Ask yourself who inflicts the suffering. It is not I." "It is you, Father. I can live here and love and care for you just as I always have loved and cared for you. What will it matter that I give some of my time to the service of the poor? Am I to be made an outcast for that?" "It does matter. I tell you I could not bear it. If you go, my house will be desolate. It will be made desolate by your self-will. But I could bear that better than to see you here, knowing all the time you were defying my wishes." "It is not self-will, Father. Oh, I would yield to you if I could. But I am so sure that this is my path, the path I must tread. I have struggled not to think so. I have even prayed that I might think otherwise, but it is useless. The conviction has grown in me in spite of myself, and I cannot silence the inner voice. If I did, I should never be happy again, and I should have no right to happiness. I know that there is such a thing as obedience to parents. I have never been undutiful. But there are other duties also, duties to oneself, duties to one's own conscience, and whatever duties I might fulfill, I know that if I left these duties undone, I should be miserable. There comes a time when one must live one's own life. It is such a little life, it is all we have, and when that time comes, it is the voice of one's own soul that must be obeyed, and I have heard the voice. Then it must be so. It appears to be the fate of parents nowadays. At least it is my fate, to bring up children who rebel against them. If it is rebellion, Father, it is the kind of rebellion of which all lovers of truth have been guilty, all honest men and women. Don't you see that in this matter I have no choice? Would not you, in my place, do as I am doing? Why do you press me so hard? If I had committed a crime, you could not be harder on me. And it is a crime that you are committing, Olivia, a crime against common sense. But go, leave me. I can endure no more. Sleep over it, pray over it if you can. Tomorrow it may be you will think differently. I cannot think differently on this subject, Father. Then you know the consequences. There is nothing more to be said. Jordan turned and left the room. For some minutes Olivia stood perfectly silent. Then the relief of tears came. She fell upon her knees and prayed. The house grew very still. The awe of midnight filled it. What was her prayer? It was the prayer which the divinest of all sufferers uttered in the crisis of his fate. Most pathetic, most human of all prayers. Quote, "If it be at all possible, let this cup pass from me, but if not, O Father, thy will be done." Unquote. Olive trees bathed in paschal moonlight, the heavy shadows of the night in a deserted garden, the far-off complaining of a brook of tears. This is the scenery set for the world's divinest tragedy. Our Gethsemanes, it may be, are touched with no gleam of poetry. They are dull enough for the casual eye. They befall us in the heart of cities, within the hearing of the mirth of streets. They seem to exist for ourselves alone. There is no sustaining and invigorating sense of a world waiting for a decision, of future ages being made richer for our pain. Yet they are not less authentic, and though we do not know it, the world does wait trembling for the issue of our struggle, since it is by the solitary victory of the individual over self, and by that alone, that the better future of the world is shaped. Olivia Jordan's Gethsemane found her that night in her father's house. And that's the end of chapter 17. Next week we'll continue with chapter 18, The Young Apostles. Until then, take care, stay safe, and God bless.